Good afternoon. We would like to welcome everyone to this ASSA ABLOY Academy virtual training session, E119 Fire-Resistive Products with Nelson Krashel. Nelson is a product manager for ASSA ABLOY Door Group and our subject matter expert for today. The session should last about 40 to 45 minutes. During the session, your lines will be muted. However, you can use the Q&A icon under the reactions tab at the bottom of the screen, and we will reserve time to answer your questions at the end. This session is being recorded and should be available to review within 24 hours on the Academy. Within 24 hours, you will also receive an email showing your proof of attendance that you can use for your employer or for sharing with any of our industry association partners, such as DHI or ALOA for industry CEUs. We do not issue formal certificates of completions for these short trainings. In addition, ASSA ABLOY has over 50 online courses that are also available at no additional cost. To get started, simply create an ASSA ABLOY Academy account and begin learning at your own pace. We're going to turn things over to Nelson now. Welcome, Nelson. There will be a slight delay as we change presenters. Go ahead and share your screen now, Nelson, and we should go.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. As mentioned, this product presentation is about fire-resistive products. Today's agenda will be looking at the differences between fire protective and fire-resistive assemblies. We will get into a little bit of the code language, which is the driving force behind the requirement for fire-resistive assemblies. We'll touch on specifications. I go through a broad overview of product and also indicate how the process for ordering the product. And as mentioned by Tom, we will answer questions at the end of the session. So when we look at fire protective and fire resistive products, there are significant differences. Fire protective is more of the commonly known, or what we know more commonly with our standard hollow metal and hollow metal doors. They both, fire resistive and fire protective, both protect against smoke and fire. One significant difference is that fire resistive also resists the transmission of heat through the assembly. When you look at that, that's a 250-degree temperature rise requirement, as opposed to the 450 temp rise for 30 minutes that we're more familiar with for means of egress. This 250-degree temperature rise rating is for the duration of the rating period. So as an example, if you had a 1-hour rated fire resistive assembly, at the end of that 1-hour fire test, the temperature rise on the surface opposite the furnace can be no more than 250 degrees above ambient temperature. That is a very significant difference between that and hollow metal. The other thing is different is that fire resistive product is primarily used for ratings greater than 1 hour, 1 hour and greater, excuse me. Fire protective is only allowed for ratings up to 45 minutes by code. Again, this is by code, and that is something that we'll get into in a little bit here. Another difference is that fire resistive assemblies, because they are tested to E119 or UL263, as defined in the code, you cannot substitute products in and out of the assembly like you can with fire protective product. As an example, a fire protective product, you could use many different manufacturers or suppliers of glass. In the case of a fire-resistive product, you have to use the glass that the product was tested with. The other thing is the frames are significantly different, and I'll get into that in as we talk about the product itself, but it does not look anything like a standard hollow metal product. And so those are really the primary differences between fire protective and fire resistive product. One thing also is the test methods are different. Fire protective products are tested to UL9, NFPA 257, whereas fire resistive products are tested to ASTM E119 and UL 263. Now, one thing to remember with fire resistive products or frames with glass is that they are tested to the same test methods as walls. So you really need to think about a fire resistive assembly with glass as a wall because they're tested to the same test method as a wall. And what that means is that if you were to have, you can install a door into a fire resistive assembly. So what that means is that door is now considered a fire protective assembly rather than a fire resistive assembly. So if you had a 2-hour wall or a 2-hour rated fire resistive assembly with glass, then that door would be a 90-minute door, just like in a 2-hour drywall wall. So as I mentioned, why do we have fire resistive assemblies? It's because code requires it. Now, fire resistive assemblies have been in the code since the 2009 edition of the building code. Code requires when any frame with glass rated 1 hour or greater needs to be fire resistive or qualified and certified to ASTM E119. And again, that includes the frame and the glass. That temperature rise rating that I mentioned also includes the frame as well as the glass. That is another difference between fire protective and fire resistive product. Obviously, if you want to have and replace a drywall wall or a wall with glass, you would need E119 product. If there is a 20 or 45-minute assembly that exceeds more than 25% of the area of a wall, fire resistive product is needed. And if there is an assembly that is more than 25% of the wall length, so if you had, say, a 10-foot wide wall and you had a single door and maybe a small side light, and it exceeded more than 2.5 feet, which it would in most cases, that side light would have to be, and the frame itself would have to be E119. And I'll emphasize this throughout the presentation, but you really need to think of this product as a wall because that's exactly how it's tested. The code requirements in this table is directly out of the 2018 building code. If you'll note, there are different markings that are used to identify fire resistive as opposed to fire protective glass. And you can see on the left the test standards that are required for fire resistive products, and then the fire test standards that are used for fire protective products. The ASTM E119 and UL 263 are the fire resistive test standards, and you can see the markings that are different between the two different types of glass, fire protective and fire resistive. A fire resistive product can actually be used as a floor or ceiling. It's rather unique. That's a rather unique application, but it can be done. If you were to run into that, you need to be sure that you have some additional engineering done in order to ensure that the loads that would be on that floor or ceiling can be maintained. This is another table directly out of the 2018 building code. And one of the reasons that the fire resistive is becoming more commonly specified and used is this table. The 2009 edition did not have this, of the code did not have this table. This really kind of clarifies where fire resistive product has to be used and where fire protective product can be used. The other thing is, as I go through this table, I want you to please pay attention to not only the frame or transom side light or borrowed light, but also the indication of the door vision panel. On the left-hand side, far left column, the wall that is intended to be fire resistive with glass are identified, which are very similar to what the classifications are or requirements for walls in general. You see the next column over has the actual wall rating. And then beyond that, you have what your door would normally be. And again, looking at the 2-hour rated or 1 hour rated, you have that 75% of the wall rating for a common fire protective door. If you look at the door vision panel, you notice that it's got a bunch of 100 square inches regardless of the hourly rating. If you come over to the next one for the fire rated glazing and marking, if you'll notice, if you have less than 100 square inches, you have a D, an H, and a 90. And what that means is that D means that it is qualified for a door. The H, as previously indicated, has the hose stream. And then the 90-minute is obviously our rating, hourly rating. If you notice here for more than 100 square inches, your designation changes. And if you'll notice, the W has been added. What that means is if you have more than 100 square inches of glass in a door, by code, the glass used has to be fire resistive. That's an important item to remember. But again, this is by code. As with any codes, they have to be enforced. So that would be another item that you would want to be sure that you're in an area where this is actually being enforced. And if you'll notice that W is included all the way down to 1 hour rated product. You go over to where they have this transom and side light assemblies, you'll notice under fire protection or fire protective product, the column says that it's not permitted. So by code, 1 hour and greater, you cannot use a fire protective assembly. In other words, an assembly tested to UL9, NFPA 257, or as I mentioned, commonly used hollow metal. The other, if you look over here next to that fire protection, it indicates what the fire resistive should be. And if you'll note, the hourly rating on these are exactly the same as the wall rating. So, and again, looking at the fact that the fire resistive assembly with glass has the same hourly rating as a wall. Again, you want to think of this product as a wall. Going over to the next column, indicating that you cannot use fire protective rating glass, and then your fire resistive, and this is identifying the basics of what the label should say on the glass. This is just a continuation of that same table, looking at exterior walls with the same information, the same requirements, the same 100 square inches, the same requirements for doors and frames, fire protective doors and frames, and the other information regarding labeling, and the fact that fire protective product is not allowed. You get down further and you get into the more common hollow metal and wood door applications where you can use fire protective glass. If you'll notice, there's no W in the classification or the labeling of the product. So when I was looking through this and get first starting, I decided to take a look at NFPA 80 and see if NFPA 80, which is kind of our Bible for fire rating and fire rated installation, to see if NFPA 80, if ASTM E119 or UL 263 was called out. And I did find that there are 2 paragraphs in NFPA 80 that actually call out and indicate that you should be using a fire resistive product. And I was surprised to see that actually was included in the NFPA 80 as far back as 2013. As I mentioned about code requirements, adoption and enforcement of any code is very, very important. Since you go back to 2009, the 2009 edition of IBC, the International Building Code, that fire resistive was required. It's probably very unusual that an area of the country has not adopted a code that requires or includes ASTM E119 or fire resistive being required for product with glass, assembly with glass. Occasionally you'll run across a jurisdiction that maybe is kind of an outlier. Omaha, Nebraska until 2018 had not adopted an edition of the code that included the fire resistive requirements for frames with glass. Many jurisdictions are just now beginning to enforce because building officials are beginning to look for it and understand it. And the other challenge we have is education of architects. They basically, a lot of them do not have the knowledge. So that is another reason that fire resistive is not being correctly specified by architects. Because one thing to note, because this requirement in the code is not being uniformly enforced across the country, the Assembly Door Group is not going to be dropping our current fire protective listings and product. So in other words, being able to use a ceramic glass in a hollow metal frame for a 60 or 90 minute rated fire rating. And the other reason for that is we definitely do not want to put our distributors at a disadvantage if another company or hollow metal manufacturer is allowing the use of a fire protective product. It makes things a little bit more difficult, but from a marketing and a sales standpoint, we definitely don't want to put our customers at a disadvantage to our competition. Specifications, that's a little bit of a challenge because it can show up the requirement for ASTM E119 and UL 263 product that contains glass. It can be in several different sections, but we do have a model spec, and that spec is the one that is bolded and underlined, that we do have that model spec available for use to assist in getting the product specified. The other thing we have found in our project services groups, that we see it as a reference on elevation drawings. We see different designations and different ways that the product can be identified or called out by an architect. The other thing is that a lot of the elevation drawings, even if it's in the spec that you want ASTM, the architect wants a ASTM E119 or UL 263 product, the cross sections on the drawings may appear to be a hollow metal frame, which is not what most fire resistive product framing appears to be. Which brings us to this frame attributes. As you can see, these two pictures look nothing like standard hollow metal at all. The one on the left is a 2-hour rated product. The one on the right is a 1-hour product. As you can see, they have a material that looks very similar to the material that's used for cores for a temperature-rise door, and is definitely a cementous type material. And if you look at the one on the right, you may get the impression as how is that being held together, which is the reason I was able to make a cut to show the connecting rods that are used to hold the assembly together. As I mentioned, with the 250-degree temperature rise for the duration of the rating period, that is the reason that there's more material for the 2-hour rated frame than is for the 1-hour rated frame, so that at the end of the rating period, you can maintain that 250-degree temperature rise on the unexposed surface of the frame itself. There are other capabilities for E119 product other than just fire. We can provide sound rating, level 3 ballistic product, and also segmented and 90-degree corners. Looking at the frame attributes, you can see that the difference in the 60 and 90 minute, you can see where the product is anchored here and here. Those holes are pre-drilled so that there's a hole above on the upper surface that will accept the head of a screw, and then the body of the screw is drilled at the bottom of the frame so that you can anchor the frame. And as I mentioned, those are pre-drilled, so there's no need for any preparation. Depending upon the size of the glass and the hourly rating, you may have a snap-on stop or an applied stop. Again, the studs for the snap-on stop are already prepped into the frame. And in the case of the applied stop, there's already a hole that has been drilled to accept that fastener. You can see the angled frame and the 90-minute or the 90-degree frame. Looking at this table here to the right, you can see the gauge of all the frames are 16 gauge. If you'll notice, I don't have a variation in the jam depth or the face dimension or the stop height. And that's because it's fixed. You cannot vary your profile for this product. And as you would expect, as you put more material into the frame, it also increases the weight of the frame. If you'll notice, the information for the 90-minute is the same as the 120-minute. The difference between a 90-minute and 120-minute assembly is the glass, not the frame. There is a 180-minute frame available. It is a limited size and cannot have any mullion. You would have, if you want multiple lights of a 180-minute frame, you would actually have to have separate frames. One other thing that I think is important to remember, we have had questions where people have thought that architects have thought that you had to either have a 2-hour rated door because you had a 120-minute rated or 2-hour rated frame. That's not the case. as you saw on the table, that door opening in a 120-minute or 2-hour rated E119 frame with or assembly with glass is a 90-minute rated door. The other thing is if you have a 3-sided frame that has a, let's say we have a 3-sided frame and you have a fire-resistive glass in that door that's going into that frame, some architects have thought that you needed to have a fire-resistive frame for that 3-sided frame. That's not the case at all. You can use a standard hollow metal frame if it's a simple 3-sided frame. Looking at how these frames are held together, because you would have multiple, you can have multiple glass panels using a clip joint, as it's called, and the entirety of the machining that's required to assemble it is done prior to the material being received either at the distributors or at a job site. So the material in the frame is machined out, and the holes to accept the fasteners for the clips is also included. Looking at interior curtain wall, most of the E119 that we just saw, that framing is intended only to be about for 12 assemblies that are about 12 feet in height. A curtain wall assembly can be used for much larger areas and much taller areas of glass. You can see there's some variability in the profile. You still have a 16 gauge product. If you notice, there is no 90-minute product. You have a variation in the face dimension of the mullion. You have this for use with Contraflam glass and Contraflam structure. Contraflam structure, which I will describe here in a minute, is a product that is butt glazed, so there's no vertical mullions. And it still is a self-supporting construction. You still have a corner and angled frames available. If you have an extremely large area, you may have to provide additional structural support. And that would probably want to be done by a professional engineer to ensure that you can keep the frame in place. You can do a level 3 ballistic product as well. You can see the profile here. It's a totally different construction than the frame we talked about before. It is held together with a pressure plate and a fastener that goes into the back mullion itself, and you can see the various dimensions that you can have in the depth of the back mullion. You can also do interior and exterior bow and bays, and then you can also do an interior and exterior type. And when I say interior and exterior, I mean the difference in location of the frame on the angle and on the 90-degree. The cover plate here can be aluminum or stainless steel, as well as primed or painted steel. Similar construction to the other framing, again with everything machined and for accepting the fasteners. Very simple construction. There's also a narrow style door. The door is actually, if you look closely, the door is very similar in appearance and construction to the 60-minute framing material. It's 2 9/16 thick. You have to use Contraflam glass, and you have to use it in an E119 frame or in a curtain wall construction. And that is because of the hardware that's unique to this narrow style door. You also have some rather serious restrictions with hardware that is available with this door. Just an illustration of the meeting edges of the doors if you have a paired opening. Looking at fire-resist, the glass itself, if you look over at the right there, the gentleman who is actually filling the spaces between the individual glass panels with the intumescent that provides the temperature rise resistance of the glass assembly. If you'll note the picture here on the left, it looks very similar to an insulated glass assembly. The reason it's being filled on an angled table is to make sure that there is no air entrapped. The amount of intumescent pumped into the assembly is predetermined and calculated to ensure that there is no reverse hourglass or hourglass effect to the glass. After the glass is assembled, it goes into an oven to assist or to accelerate the curing of the intumescent. The intumescent would normally cure over time, but they put it into the autoclave to speed that curing process. If you look at the construction of the glass a little bit closer, you can see the outside glass panes are tempered with the interior glass panes being annealed. This is a makeup of a 2-hour rated product. You have intumescent layers as identified between panes of glass. The way this all works is that when you do a fire test, the heat, let's say, is the furnace is on the left-hand side of the assembly. In the process of the fire test, that glass would break and fall away, the intumescent that would be exposed and then would bloom, as they call it, and provide that heat transmission resistance. Once it would be consumed by the fire or by the heat, then the next pane of glass would break and that intumescent would actually be exposed and continue to prevent transmission of heat. And then at the end of the test, you usually have the last 2 panes of glass still intact, and so that you can perform the required host stream test. So if you look at the Contraflam, as you might expect with the increase in hourly rating, you also increase the thickness of the glass to maintain that temperature rise resistance or rating for the duration of the test. And as a result, you can see the weight of the product increases as well. A Contraflam structure, only a 60 and 120 minute rated product. Because of the construction, it's a little bit thicker and weighs a little bit more, but one significant difference is the fact that it has much larger area that you can for each individual glass pane. One thing to remember is that this glass can be affected by sustained temperatures under 15 degrees or greater than 110 degrees. It does not affect the performance of the glass. However, the glass could cloud, and that cloudiness will not dissipate if you were to bring the glass back into that temperature between 15 degrees and 110 degrees. As I mentioned, Contraflam structure, it's a butt glazed material. You can see that you end up with a sight line of about 1/8 of an inch, and 1/8 of an inch at the junction of the 2 glass assemblies. And you can still do a bow or bay or radius type frame with the Contraflam, but you are restricted to a 19-degree max angle between the two glass assemblies. Looking at the ballistic capabilities, you can see that you have a reduced area for the ballistic product, and it is a little bit, it is thicker than the standard 60-minute, 90-minute glass. And 90-minute glass, obviously for doors, you would not have 120-minute or a 2-hour rated product, but you do have it available for frames. So we look at the features and options that we've already discussed for E119 assemblies with glass. It protects against fire, smoke, and the important thing of the radiant heat for both the glass and the frame. There is no maximum overall size because it is tested as a wall. You need to think about that think about it again, treat it as a wall. It's optically clear. You have many different capabilities with it, other than just fire. You have ballistic STC. You also have the ability to use some of the product for hurricane. And we also have product for very small windows for tornado. Standard hollow metal and wood doors can be used in the ASTM E119 frame with glass. We have narrow style doors that I mentioned. We can use standard hollow metal and wood doors. You can use the hardware you can use with those doors include mortise locks, cylindrical locks, rim exits, vertical rods. You can do rim exit by mullion. You can have butt or continuous hinges. The only thing that you really have to be careful of for the most part is any overhead concealed hardware. That is, and there may be some overhead stops that you could use. If you have access control, electrification can be provided. And of course, it meets the requirements for UL 263 and ASTM E119. Here's an example of some of the assemblies that could be used. If you'll notice the one on the left, that's the standard framing. You can see the vertical and horizontal mullions. The other thing, as you can see, is it's actually on the wall of a stairwell. Normally by code, you wouldn't be able to put that glass in a stairwell, but because it's tested as a wall and has the performance requirements of a wall, you can actually install glass on a stairwell. Very common application for the product. The center shows the center picture shows the Contraflam structure. If you notice, there's no mullions. You have that very small sight line vertically, and Contraflam structure, again, it can only be that butt joint can only be done vertically. Another thing to note, is the amount of glass you have. There is a possibility, depending upon where you're using the glasses, the assembly, you could obtain some lead points because you're not using artificial light. You can bring light further into the building by using this product rather than having it be a drywall wall. Also, looking at the picture on the right, that is the Contraflam structure. You can see that's a very, very large area of glass, again, using this curtain wall, using Contraflam structure. And you can see where it looks like there has been some additional structural work done to help hold that large area glass in place. If you'll notice on the far right of this picture, it looks like you have the exterior of the building. So in this case, again, you could be looking at a potential for lead points because you would have the potential to bring natural light further into the building. Fire-resistive assemblies, again, I can't emphasize it enough, are treated and tested as a wall. The frame and the glass have a temperature rise rating for the duration of the rating period, which really separate them from fire protective products tested to UL 9 and NFPA 257. That's a very significant difference in requirements for the product. Another item that's different or important to remember is you cannot substitute or interchange components. And when I say that, I'm talking about the glass in the frame, not necessarily if you have an opening, a door opening in the wall that you could still do the substitution regarding the door and the frame and the hardware. Again, just emphasize openings in an E119 assembly with glass are treated like a door in a drywall wall. Just want to emphasize that as well. And also, you don't need to use a fire-resistive frame if you're having a simple three-sided door frame. How do you order this product? Because of the way that this product is specified and because of the unique nature of it, it really does not, unfortunately, at this point in time, does not fit our standard ordering process. So we do have quote request forms. And if you'll notice, there's a multitude of items that have to be provided so that the product can be properly quoted. All quotes will be entered into TrackPoint. Once a quote is accepted, you want to make sure you put the TrackPoint quote number and the purchase order number in the order. And once the order is received, not before the order is at the time of quote, but once the order is received, shop drawings will be developed that include all the details for the installation. This is an example of the shop drawings that will be provided. One important thing to remember is the signature, and there is a reason that that signature is there, as you might expect with all the additional material that goes into and the amount of glass, the preparation for the glass, the preparation of the frame. This product is not the same cost as a hollow metal frame of the same type or same size. So that's the reason we want to be absolutely sure that what is going to be manufactured is actually what the customer or end user wants. So that's the reason for the signature. If you look at it, all the information is there. You will have different cross sections and details as part of the shop drawing, showing all the details of the preparations that are going to be provided for hardware. If you notice here, the most common delivery is knockdown. In other words, each one of these pieces would be come individually, and then you'd use the clip system to assemble it in the field. Another option is to have certain portions of it welded, and that's what this shows. One important thing on this is to see the fact that where the clip joints are called out. So if a customer requests a welded frame, they may not get they may think they're getting the entirety of this elevation, when in fact they are getting two pieces welded and then three intermediates that will be loose. And the reason for that is simply because of the weight of the frame itself. If you do have a door in the assembly, there will be information about the hardware, also the door swing, and if you look down here on the bottom left, also will have a weight, the total weight of the assembly, including the glass in the frame. The other thing is, because of the time to manufacture this product, there is no quick ship. for this product or C Express. That's it for today on this. Any questions? Hello?
Yes, Nelson, it appears we have one question. It says at
Okay.
the end, can you please say again where the table of the code requirement slides comes from?
It comes from Chapter 7 of the International Building Code. I believe it's Chapter 716.
Excellent. And that's our only question so far. But thank you very much for your time today, Nelson, and great job.
Thank you very much. Have a great day, guys.
Thanks
you.
all.
Bye-bye.